Richardson. Hello, I'm Billie, and this is Show and Tell, your weekly vintage knitting podcast. I'm coming to you today from New York City, where finally it's sweater weather. I don't speak like that. People in my family do. That's because I'm not a native New Yorker. But this is the season that we knitters wait for, isn't it? So what am I working on, you want to know? I'm working on a sleeveless garment. It's only been for more than 4 months since I started my Susan Crawford Jeannie. Let me grab it and show it to you. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, for over 4 months in the making. And I'm not finished. 46 stitches to 4 inches on a size 1 needle, 9 colors. And each one of these bands has a different chart. The light colored bands are all the same, but the darker ones, you can see every single one is different. So you can never let go of following that chart. I use Knit Companion, so I can take it with me on the road, not that I've been going anywhere, but whatever I'm watching on YouTube, whatever videos I watch, whatever movies I watch, I always have in the corner of my screen the little piece of the chart that I'm working on at the time, and I can scroll just through that little bit. But I have finished all of the knitting up to the shoulders. I've done the 3 needle bind off for the shoulders. That's the part that you see that's really purpley. And I've started to get ready for some of the steeking. I have already steeked one armhole. I have a whole video showing some of what I've done, which I'll insert here. Let me start by saying this is not for the faint of heart, so if you're prone to palpitations, you might want to turn away. I'm using extra fine merino wool, so I opted to use the yarn itself, that hot pink yarn that you see bunched at the top, to make 2 vertical lines, whip stitching, or actually back stitching, up a column and then down another column beside the center column of stitches, in the hopes that over time that it might start to felt, since I was using wool against wool instead of embroidery floss or thread. So here I'm showing how I picked up the stitches before I made a cut, and I had already started to knit the ribbing. Here I'm showing you my little toolkit, which I've demonstrated in an earlier episode. I'll give a link to that. And in that little Altoids tin, I keep my very small scissors. And here I'm bravely beginning to cut the very first stitch. And I did this very gingerly, very carefully. Don't forget, there's 46 stitches in 4 inches. So these stitches are tiny. I'm cutting one at a time, making sure that that pink yarn is not in the way. And this was grueling. I have never done it before. I might never do it again. One little stitch at a time. I proceeded with great caution. The back stitching method I wasn't too happy with, and you'll see what's going to happen. For my next steek, I used a slightly different method, which I'll show later. But very shortly, I'm going to run into a problem. I'm not sure why it happened, but it did. The back stitching wasn't an exactly straight as an arrow line. It sort of wiggled a little bit to the left and the right.
it was very tricky to avoid cutting into it, and I was giving it my best shot. I kept turning the inside out so that I could see what was happening in the background, because that seemed important to me. I didn't just want to shoot blind. I kept checking. Am I between the two pinks? I think so far so good. Nothing's unraveled. I put the scissors down because I think I recognized that I had run into a problem at this point. Enter Fray check. So I was advised to insert something behind the yarn, behind the knitting, before putting this glue down. So I inserted a little strip of white plastic in there and very carefully started applying this glue just to the very edge. This particular model of Fray check had a little applicator tip. It didn't really look like much was happening, but I put my faith in Fray check. Now that I had secured those edges with that little touch of glue, I came back to continue. And again, one snip at a time, very delicately. And now I put my finger behind it just to be sure there was nothing in the way. No strands, no loose ends. Sometimes I had to go back. I might have missed a little something because there are floats behind all of this, you realize. So it's not just the little stitch, it's the floats that are there as well. You can see I got a little more brazen. I was moving along here at a clip because now I had my Fray check to fall back on. I just thought, let me keep going. Let me get this over with, the pain of it all. Almost, Billie, you're almost there. Keep going. I'm aiming for that burgundy. That will be the end of the line. You can see there's a little opening there. That's going to be the top of the armhole. And as I mentioned, there's my ribbing already in place. I think that was a good thing to do, and I will do that again, to have everything sort of held together. That was my backup, that at least the ribbing would prevent it from moving beyond that. And voila! Completely through. Oh, one more little stitch. One more snip or two. There it is. This is the first time that I was seeing actually how big my armhole would be. I was putting my faith in the pattern that the armhole would be the right size, which it looks to be. Now I proceeded to glue up both edges really thoroughly. I wasn't taking any more chances here. This was another first for me. I had never used Fray check. I do have another sweater that I'm going to use it on now that I have it. You might remember the sweater from Vogue Knitting magazine that had fabric ruffles down the front and around the cuffs. I'll put a link to that episode as well. Somebody had recommended using Fray check on the edges of the fabric. I was attempting to just hand stitch the edges to keep everything in place, but I think that this is probably a better solution, so I'm going to go back and apply it to that sweater as well, now that I have it. Yeah, you don't want to get this glue on the other part of the sweater. You don't want it sticking to itself. And there's not a lot of fabric in here on the inside, which is kind of nice. It's not going to be bulky around that ribbing. Oh, I gave up on the applicator. I just went right for the tip of it. I felt like I had more control. Because this is so many teeny little stitches, I felt like the plastic applicator was kind of getting hung up on the stitches, and I didn't want it to pull anything or snag anything. It's not like crazy glue. It is clear, so it had the sensation of being sort of crazy gluish, but it's not. It's very thin, liquidy. There you can see my pink column that I attempted to create. It's there, but it was not totally intact.
I hope you're not getting sick of hearing about Jeannie, because I'm not finished, and I won't be finished in the immediate future. You probably are aware that I did a knit along with several other women. One of them had already finished hers, and she's been really an inspiration to the rest of us, sort of nudging us in the right direction about some, little things to look out for. But we've done some other videos where we're in dialogue about it, and we will have one more of those at some point in the future, to be determined. I think all of us want to finish ours before we meet again. So that's enough about Jeannie for today. I wanted to move on to talking about the collaboration I'm doing with Roxanne Richardson on the 1940s pattern Harlequin. We've merged two different patterns, but that's the overarching theme. It has sets of triangles going down the front and down the sleeves. I have put together a video explaining, first step, how I went about choosing my colors, And she has done the same. She's graciously offered me a small segment that is a little teaser. After you watch both of us, we invite you to uh, crisscross. So I'm going to leave a link below in the show notes. You can go over to Roxanne's channel and see a more complete discussion of how she went about choosing her colors. And I'm going to insert a little video footage here about how I went about choosing mine. Pursuant to my conversation with Roxanne Richardson, we agreed that we're going to each be knitting on our own and checking in with one another periodically over weeks to come. But our first step we'll describe to you separately, maybe sometimes together. Today, I wanted to share with you, first of all, how I go about selecting a yarn. In this instance, because our pattern is 3 colors, it's a particular nightmare. 1 color, pretty easy. 2 colors, not too bad. Once you get into a 3rd color, it's a different realm. Let me show you a picture of the sweater that we've decided to collaborate on. So this is the pattern as found on Ravelry. It's called Harlequin, and it's from a 1949 edition of Stitchcraft. You can see that it's 3 colors, and one could choose to do the background color light as it is here, or possibly dark with 2 contrasting colors. Now, you might remember from a prior episode that we agreed that we're not going to follow this pattern alone. We're going to merge this design onto a more conventional 1940 sweater that has some large padded shoulders. And we showed the image of that previously. It's a very basic sweater, except for the shoulder treatment. But this is the motif, and this is where our 3 color action is going to come into play. I'm a very pragmatic person, and when I'm trying to build out my wardrobe, I want to try and make sweaters that are going to be wearable and that tie in some way to the rest of my wardrobe. Now, I tend to wear a lot of black and I tend to wear a lot of gray, but I do love color and I enjoy wearing color. So I estimate that about 340 days of the year, I'm wearing black pants. I didn't want to make a black sweater. People complain about how tedious it is, how hard it is on the eyes, especially if you don't have good light to knit by, and I'm often knitting at night. So I opted not to go with black, although I was considering combinations. And let me show you what I did when I was trying to think about the colors that I wanted to use. So I did think about something with shades of gray, maybe a charcoal gray and a lighter gray, or maybe even a touch of black with a chartreuse or a lime green color. And I use this software application called StitchFiddle, which you can see here. And I just mocked up a couple of triangles worth of those colors. But then I played with some other colors, like, maybe hot pink and green could have been interesting. Or I thought maybe a couple different shades of blue. Here's another combination with a lighter gray over here. And then because I have a pink handbag and pink and black work well together, I thought of maybe doing a very pale green, like a celery green with 2 shades of pink. And I also thought of a couple shades of pink, a shocking pink and a baby pink on a brown background, because when I'm not wearing black, I do have navy pants and brown pants. So I thought I might do like the brown story by going there. But I ultimately settled on a combination kind of resembling this olive green and a couple shades of blue. And I'm going to explain just how I arrived at these and the conundrum in choosing my yarns. I had a woman named Jess as a guest on one of my early programs, and she swore by Quince Co. She seemed to use a lot of it, and she only does vintage knitting. One of the things she really loved about Quince was that they offer so many different colors and so many different weights. Now, I'm a fingering gal these days, most of the time. I like to be working on a size 2 or 3 needle, and the pattern called for 7 stitches to the inch, which this particular yarn that I'm considering probably will give with one of those needle sizes. I have never knit with this yarn, so I haven't swatched. I don't know, but according to their specs, I should be in the ballpark. Now there's all these zillions of colors available, which is something that it seems more and more I need, because I'm really color sensitive and I'm very particular, especially about the shade. That shades should match. You know, there's lots of different shades of black. If you're trying to match black, it's really hard, for example. Well, once you get into other colors, it can also be daunting. So more and more, I look for companies that offer a wide array of colors, which clearly Quince does. I had the idea, if I'm not going to match my black pants, of at least matching something else from my wardrobe, and I'm an accessories gal. I went into my closet to look for a handbag that doesn't get a lot of use because I don't have many things to wear with it. And I came up with this handbag. And I thought, it has a variety of colors. I should be able to figure out 3 colors from here that I would like to wear in a sweater. So here's my process. Looking at these colors, I knew that I was not in the pinks and peaches, but I was going to be more in this zone. Maybe this is an olive green and a peacock kind of blue, some of these lighter shades of blue. I thought I might try and pick up this and the darker color, something around in there. I would have considered a green like this. It's a little difficult green. It's kind of like a sage. Anyway, the website is a little bit difficult to navigate because when you hover over these, it doesn't tell you the name of the color, which would have been helpful, Quince, if you're watching. But they do at least have a compare colors bar over here. So I threw some of these into their color comparison. Just a moment, and I'll try and bring up that screen. Their application only allows you to compare 5 colors at a time. And I really wanted to compare about 12 colors at a time. So I had several screens resembling this one set up with 5 colors in each. And see these little dots? I tried to group them. You know, I tried to have all the greens up, all the blues up, and then I was comparing side by side and also comparing to my handbag. It wasn't easy. It was not at all easy. But by process of elimination, I could knock some of these out. So for example, if you look at Marsh over here, without seeing the handbag, you might think that that ties in nicely. But then when you put the handbag up, you can see that Marsh is a little bit kind of a cocoa-y color. It's not olive and it's not really green. So that got eliminated. And Cypress also didn't really do the trick. Now this handbag, you can see right here, when I pivot this and the light hits this at a different angle than it's hitting this, this looks like a very different color from this, but it is the same color. So I did not think that this cypress color was a good match for that. And on it went. I tried all the different permutations and combinations until I really narrowed it down to probably these 3 or 4. Let me show you the handbag again. The colors will never be exact because different fabrics will always reflect the light differently, but they just need to harmonize. And I think that these are pretty good, at least the way that they're rendered on my computer screen. I'm curious to know what you think. Now, think back about the sweater, how it has the 2 triangles side by side. I'm contemplating doing the green as my background color. So I want to make sure that these are going to look good as the triangles side by side with it. But then I wonder if there's more of a contrast between this and this, which might be better than this and this. But here's my thinking. Often the colors of the yarn are not like they appear on my computer screen. And I sometimes find that they're a little bit less saturated than the way I see them on my screen. So I'm anticipating that this color may come in a little bit darker than I'm seeing it here. And this lighter shade might be a little too light. I'm also, again, trying to be practical. If this light shade is a triangle that's up here and I drip a little food on it, if it's something like soy sauce or something with oil in it, it might be hard to get it out of such a light color. So I'm thinking, and it'll be very noticeable. So I'm thinking to maybe go with this little darker shade just from that perspective. And I'm hoping that that color, I'm pretty sure that they're all going to blend nicely with one another. I'm just hoping that this will be a little more saturated than the lighter one. So I have narrowed it down from a wide field to these 3 colors.
Well, that was at least until I heard Roxanne Richardson talk about color values and monochrome filters. So I decided to just double check and look at what I found. So now I might go with the lighter shade. Thank you, Roxanne.
I don't do color work a lot. And when I do, it always comes with a certain amount of anxiety because I have very mild color vision deficiency. So I do have trouble with some colors. And then I don't have a lot of practice using tools and that could help me select colors. I just don't have that kind of practice that I have with textured stitch patterns where I've built up a lot of experience and I kind of know if something's missing or something needs to be changed. I've built up some instincts about how to adjust that, and I just don't have that with color. There are a couple of rules I give myself when it comes to knitting with color that I kind of lean on if it's at all possible. One of the things that I thought was kind of interesting about this 1940s pattern is that even though it's intarsia, it's color block. I often think of intarsia as being a little easier to pick colors because you have these little just blobs of color and they may or may not be next to each other. And it's not like with stranded color work where you're alternating between these colors. That really changes their colors and the effect of what it looks like. And you also have to think more about color value when it comes to stranded color work. You need to have enough contrast between the 2 colors in terms of their value, like whether they're light, medium, or dark, in order for the stitch pattern to show up. So it struck me that this 1940s pattern, even though it was intarsia, it was similar to choosing colors for stranded color work because those triangles, all of the triangles, the red and yellow in the original pattern were right next to each other, so they had to contrast with each other. But they also had to work with the background in terms of having a different color value. And so my thought was, oh, there's a light, a medium, and a dark in terms of color value. And you can see color value if you look at the colors through your smartphone and in your camera, and you can switch the photo to have a monochrome filter, and you can see whether or not there's enough contrast amongst all of the different colors. So I did that first, and I realized because the yellow was so bright in the original, for some reason I thought that was the medium color and the gray was light, but that's not the case. The gray is medium and the yellow is very light, so it does contrast with the background being a medium color value. And the red is very dark, and so that contrasts with the medium as well. So you're not going to get this kind of loss of color. It's not going to get muddied in either case. And then between the two of them, one is a light and one is a dark. So I thought, oh, well, that's a handy thing. I don't think that I would have had to do that. I think I could have used two different colors that were both dark or both light for the triangles. Potentially, and it could have been okay, but I just felt like, oh, this is the rule that the original designer used, now I'm going to follow that. So I wanted to use yarns that were all from the same company, just because then I know that the stitches are going to present the same, they're going to have the same density, they're going to have the same texture as each other. I don't have to worry about that aspect. There were two choices I had. One was Knit Picks Palette, which comes in a lot of colors, and also brown sheep yarn, Nature Spun. I used Nature Spun in their worsted weight quite a lot for my technique videos, and I'd been wanting to use fingering weight in a pattern for quite a while. I bought some about a year and a half ago and experimented with a little bit and quite liked it. So I really wanted to use brown sheep yarn Nature Spun if I could. When I originally bought some, I bought their color card book. It's printed, it's not like actual samples of yarn like you'd get in the old days, but the color is corrected in the printing process, so you can actually see the colors. It was still tricky because the colors are all independent little squares that are not next to each other, and some of them are in different pages. So that was really hard for me. I really like the original colors of the pattern, but I decided I wanted to push myself a little bit and choose my own colors. I chose these two colors for the triangle. One of them is called Boysenberry, and the other one is called, I think, something like Harvest Wheat. So I had looked at a really bright yellow that had caught my eye, and I just felt like this maybe toned it down a little bit. It wouldn't be so, so bright. And I wanted the gray for the background. I really like grays, obviously. And I was a little confused because it seemed to be grays all the way through the color card pages. Like, why do they have the grays in different places? And I thought maybe it was because the grays would have some undertone of colors that were around them on the same page, but I couldn't tell. And he said yes. And so I chose this gray, which is called Silver Charm. There's nothing in the word that led me to believe that there was a little bit of a purple undertone in it, but he could see it. And he said he did think it went well with the boysenberry. So I bought these three and to see, so I could swatch with them, and I really do like them quite a lot. So these are the three colors that I am going to use.
The next phase is for me to try and figure out how much of each color I'm going to need. And since I don't have this yarn on hand, I can't swatch to try and figure that out. So in my next clip, I'm going to show you how I'm going to guesstimate what I need. I've been sharing with you for a while some pearls of wisdom, so I'll insert a little something here with this week's pearl of wisdom. And I also have been sharing with you some of my mother's pearls. So I have another set I'd like to show you today. truth be told, these originally belonged to my grandmother. I think that they were purchased in the 1960s. So there's a pair of earrings. I guess I'm going to have to insert a still picture, but there are these earrings, and then there is a matching necklace. These are blue. I believe that these are natural, not dyed. And there's a very pretty gold clasp, which you'll see in the still picture. It would be worn, clasp would be worn on the side like that. So it's very pretty. I have worn them on occasion. They don't go with just anything. They're rather special. The color's really beautiful. But I'm happy to have them. And I think I forgot to mention, my mother's name was Pearl. So pearls were a part of her life. I should be back next week with a little update on the Harlequin and perhaps more about Jeannie. Until then, take it easy, stay safe, everyone.